Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our fourth episode of Mark's Side of the Ring. I am your host, Miguel Minetti, alongside my co-host, Nick Fiorentino. Nick, how you doing today?
Good. Looking forward to seeing the AEW and the WWE truthers coming out and seeing how the debate goes.
Yes, I as well. Nick, show the audience. What do you got for your drink today? You got anything by you?
And I got a little Veil Tropical Mango and a shot of tequila.
All right. Nick's always ready to go on Mark's Side of the Ring. We have a special episode for you guys today. We actually have two of our close friends on here. First, I'm going to introduce my buddy, Fred DeCorte. Fred, how you doing today?
I'm good, Miguel. How you doing? Glad to finally be on the podcast.
And we're excited to have you, my friend. Fred is our friend here, a big wrestling fan, big-time, long-time WWE fan. First time on the show, Fred. We're excited to have you. And my other guest that we wanted to introduce is our other buddy here, Tim Sickoria. Tim, how you doing today, bro?
Doing great, Miguel. Doing great. I wasn't listening. What was your buddy's name down in the corner?
Fred.
It doesn't matter what his name is. And the only reason I say that is because that's the last time that the E in WWE was relevant. That's entertainment. What they're doing now, let's just say, is not. And if you want to know what I was drinking, I have a little bit of Captain. Maybe a lot of bit of Captain. And I got a little bit of Macho Man. Did the shot without me, but that's all right. Yeah, I see where his loyalty to AEW stands. That's right there. That's right, boys.
As Tim takes his shot of Captain or whatever the hell he's drinking, if you guys haven't guessed, we have a really exciting episode for you today. So we wanted to invite our friends Fred and Tim on the show because today's episode is going to be all about WWE versus AEW, right? So we have the two most prominent products in the wrestling community going on right now, which is obviously the WWE and AEW. And who better to have on than two of some of the most passionate fans, our friend Fred here, who's a passionate, longtime WWE fan, and then our other friend Tim over here, who's been pro AEW over the last year or so. So we got a lot of exciting topics to discuss with you guys today. I'm ready if the three of you guys are ready. Give me a nice thumbs up if you guys are ready to go here. All right. So we're going to kick it off. So the first question, obviously, we're going to kind of just go right into the meat and potato thing. So we want to talk about WWE versus AEW. So obviously, I know, like I just mentioned, we have, we know where Fred and Tim stand as far as the product goes. But Fred, maybe we'll kick it off with you. We know that you're a lifelong WWE fan. Tell us what draws you into WWE and maybe what maybe not draws you into AEW.
For me, what draws me into WWE is just the magnitude of it. You have so many superstars between all three rosters of Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and there's just so many different options within those three shows. Whereas AEW, it's just the one little show. Not that they have a big roster, not a huge roster, but I just feel like WWE is just bigger. And I think we're seeing that with the Thunderdome right now, just seeing how big WWE puts not just a wrestling show out, but a production. There's a lot of things that go with it. The pyro, the entrances, the video packages. It's not just the bell-to-bell in-ring action. And also the entertainment aspect of it. I just think WWE, my God, over 50 years they've been doing this. So that they know how to incorporate entertainment with wrestling. And I think the history of WWE too is a big thing for me. Generational. They say then, now, and forever, but it's true. I've been watching now for over 20 years, and there's people that have been watching longer than me. And I'm hoping that people will continue to watch for years and years. And it's just, I could see AEW's allure. They're the new kid. They're the new person in town, kind of thing. But we'll see if they're able to sustain that.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good points, right? And Tim, we're going to get to you in a second, but obviously WWE has been around much longer than AEW. AEW only being a year in existence here, with WWE being 50, 60 plus years, however long you want to count the actual product. But I think what's interesting, right, about WWE is more than anything is the legacy of it, right? What I mean by that is how many generational talents have come from the WWE, whether you have guys like Bruno Sammartino, right, who kind of put wrestling on the map back in the late 70s, early 80s. Then to transition to Hulk Hogan, who, in my opinion, was probably the first mainstream star that actually put wrestling on the map with a crossover audience, right? He was on television. He was on nighttime talk shows. Then it transitioned eventually to the Attitude Era, where you had probably some of the biggest names of all time. You have The Rock, who's obviously in Hollywood, right? Hollywood's highest paid actor. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the #1 merch seller of all time, right? And probably the biggest superstar in the WWE history, kind of going down the line to John Cena and then more recently Roman Reigns. So I think what's cool about the WWE is obviously that opportunity that they've been around for so long and they've created star after star over the last 50 years. But Tim, I want to transition over to you because obviously you're a lifelong wrestling fan as well too. But over the last year or so, you've been kind of texting all of us and telling us that AEW is really where you put your focus on. So why don't you share with us some of the things that you're enjoying about the AEW product currently?
All right, but before I get into AEW, let's just nip this in the bud. I'm a wrestling fan. This shirt right here is older than Fred's been a fan of the WWE. I've been there since, me and Nick were in diapers watching wrestling together when we lived next door to each other. It's just AEW is fresh and new and something different. They give the wrestlers their chance to do whatever they want, as long as it's within the realm of what can be on TV. They let them, I'm sure you're going to bring up the third party Twitch and other sources of entertainment that they could utilize in AEW that now Vince, for whatever reason, is going against, which I cannot sit well with the talent. I can't imagine how it does. But that's why you're seeing a lot of the guys jump over to AEW. You're seeing people to reach their full potential. If you look at every single champion in AEW, there are some ties to WWE. I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing for what they're going for, but it's something that is very refreshing. And, me personally, I like seeing new talent. I like NXT better than I like Raw and SmackDown. That's just because there's a lot of talent on there that I've never seen before. No one's seen. The idea of seeing something new and that being surprising is something that WWE is lacking because they've been around for so long. There's only so much you could do with Randy Orton that you haven't seen before. There's only so much you could do with some of the other talent that's been there forever that, it gets stale, it gets old. The reason I like AEW so much is it's new, it's refreshing, and I think they're pointing in the right direction.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good points here too, because I am been enjoying AEW over the last year or so. Truth be told, I really wasn't into it at first. I didn't think the hype was there, but over the last, I'd say 6 months or so, I don't know, it's really started to grab my attention. Not more than WWE, and obviously you guys know where I stand with that, but I think AEW has the opportunity to build some really nice stars. Obviously, off the top of my head, MJF, right? He's probably going to be the biggest star, homegrown talent that AEW has. You have Orange Cassidy, right? I mean, he's been in a long-time feud now, going on 3 months with Chris Jericho. Who better to have your first meaningful feud than the Ayatollah of Rock and Roll, right? You got guys that have come over from the independent scene that were known over in Japan and maybe in some of the smaller circuits like the Young Bucks, right? And some of these really, really great tag teams here. And, I think the part where AEW is starting to really put it together is they're taking not just every single talent from WWE, but they're taking talent that they know they can get over, right? And we're going to talk about a couple of guys that have jumped over recently. But, when you look at someone like Jon Moxley, right, formerly Dean Ambrose, I mean, the guy was a star in WWE. And when he first left, and it was actually on our wedding night, I remember, Fred, you coming over to me on the dance floor was like, hey, Jon Moxley or Dean Ambrose is in AEW, which I was like, what? I was mind blown about it because nobody predicted that to happen. My first thoughts were, I don't think he can be bigger of a star than he was as Dean Ambrose. And, again, we're going to talk about that topic in just a few, but I mean, boy, was I wrong on that. So I think AEW has some recipes for success. And we're starting to see that over the last 6 months or so. Nick, where do you stand on the whole WWE and AEW topic here?
I'm pretty much in the middle. I think there's pros and cons for both. I mean, I think the predictability of WWE is their biggest issue, or at least my biggest issue with them. We've talked multiple times about different pay-per-views and them setting up matches and feuds to kind of know where the inevitable is. I mean, if I'm watching a pay-per-view, I don't want to know the main event, the outcome of the main event, before it actually happens, which is why I've had such an issue with the Roman Reigns and Uso title match for the next pay-per-view. There's just no way in hell Roman Reigns is losing the title. And maybe if Roman Reigns feuded with Braun Strowman again, we would be saying the same thing. He would make more sense as an opponent. But I think we all know what the outcome is going to be. Roman Reigns is going to be a champ for a long time. But it's just when you put, the predictability in it, it kind of drags it a little bit for me and makes it not watchable. The creative control that AEW gives its superstars, I think, is a breath of fresh air. You look at a guy like MJF that you mentioned before. MJF couldn't happen in WWE. He'd be watered down. Vince would have to have his fingerprints on it, and it just wouldn't be the same thing. I think a guy like Zack Ryder, which I've mentioned before, can get over big time in AEW because he got over on his own creativity in WWE before they, again, bought into the Z, Long Island stories and watered that down and then eventually canceled it. At the same time, though, I'm not going to shit all over WWE. Sometimes too much control creatively can be a bad thing. You take a guy like Orange Cassidy, who had 3 matches with Chris Jericho, and I'm not necessarily sure if he's better today than he was before those 3 matches. I mean, he's gotten a pinfall win over Chris Jericho, which should be a really big deal. But to have the culmination match, and I'm assuming the culmination match be a mimosa, the loser gets thrown into a bucket of fucking mimosa. I don't necessarily know if that elevated anybody. It certainly didn't elevate Orange Cassidy. And Jericho, taking the loss there would have been better if he lost outright. I think that would have elevated Orange Cassidy to a main event player, and they made a mistake with that. We talked about the Stadium Stampede on a previous show. And how there was nothing about that could have even possibly been described as predictable. I mean, the entire thing was unpredictable. Then you go back to WWE, and we were all in attendance, Fred. I don't know if you were, but for the original John Cena surprise entrant at the Royal Rumble. And you fast forward till now, and fucking MVP is coming out at the Royal Rumble for the Nostalgia Pop. And everybody knows on this show that I hate MVP. But it's losing its luster time and time again, and it's making me like, oh, it's Stone Cold anniversary show. Like, I've fucking seen Stone Cold 6 times already this year. I don't need to see Stone Cold. I liked Stone Cold in 1998 and 1997 and 1996. Like, Stone Cold coming out and drinking beers and stunning Shane McMahon's not cool anymore. It's not going to make me change the channel. So I'm kind of Switzerland on this. I mean, I think there's pros and cons for both, but I find myself always going back to old reliable, which is WWE.
Yeah, and I think you said a lot of things there, but, where I differ with you, and I'm sure Fred's going to agree with me on that, is, Stone Cold Steve Austin could come on my television every single night. I mean, I am a nostalgic mark, right? I mean, I'll watch everything that happens in WWE and AEW, and I have a lot of respect, and I have my favorites of the new blood, but nothing beats that attitude era for me, right? That 1998 to 2002, 2003 crowd. Stone Cold Steve Austin can come out every Monday night on Raw. And Fred, I'll let you elaborate on this because I think you're on the same boat as me, right?
Oh, big time. I mean, I could watch Stone Cold just go in the ring, not even drink beer, just sit in a chair in the ring for 2 hours. And it'd probably be more entertaining than sometimes what you see on any wrestling show. Not just WWE, but AEW, WWE, TNA, or Impact, whatever. But, yeah, I mean, I'm big into the nostalgia as well. I love seeing the older guys come back. I mean, there are times when maybe they shouldn't be in the ring. We've seen that maybe. But yeah, and as far as even with AEW, I think some of the cool things is seeing Jake the Snake Roberts on their show, and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, when they're used in the right way, when they're used to enhance the younger talent, not take away from them, which sometimes. Like for instance, it was great back in 2012 going into the Raw 1000th episode. Poor Heath Slater. I mean, he was getting his ass kicked every single week by some legend. Now, you can say that maybe it did get him over somewhat because he got, notoriety from doing that angle. But then there's the other side of the coin that says Heath Slater, he got beat by everybody, people that have been retired for 15 years, people that, haven't wrestled in forever. So, there's two different theories there. But I just think seeing the old guys come out does, produce a good rating and a good pop and gets people excited. It's what they do with that. You get people in with that. It's how they follow up with it the next week.
But here's where WWE makes the mistake, and I'll use the Raw 100 build-up as my example. When Psycho Sid came out, Psycho Sid hadn't been on WWE in forever. It was cool to see him. Same thing with Vader. We can argue that the biggest star out of all of the people that popped up on Heath Slater was Lita, but was anybody really excited to see Lita? No, because she's on it fucking all the time. It's like, I don't need to see Lita anymore. And you take a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who does the same shit, like The Rock comes back, I'll watch that because The Rock is different every single time. He says the same kind of jokes, but it's always fresh, it's always new. He's always saying something, plus he's The Rock. But you look at The Undertaker, you look at these guys, it's kind of like, yeah, it was cool to see the Rolling Stones in the 60s and in the 70s. They were old when I saw them in the 90s, but the Rolling Stones are still touring, and now the Rolling Stones are the Strolling Bones, and that's what I think of when I see, like, The Undertaker and all these other people. It's like, I don't need to see it anymore. Like, I'll go on the WWE Network for $9.99, and I'll watch what I liked about The Undertaker, resurrecting by a bolt of lightning when Kane set him on fire, or, Stone Cold driving a beer truck. Like, that shit's cool. But coming out and doing the same thing every single time and then announcing it is like, oh, we have a special episode in store. We have Stone Cold for the 8th time this year to try to get clicks and hits. It's for me, it's not going to do it. Like, I've seen it. He's cool. I love him. His theme song, everything, cool. But what is he going to do? He's going to drink beer?
Yeah. So to go on what Nick's saying, I wouldn't mind if Stone Cold came out if it was to enhance another talent. Whenever you see those type of old school guys come out, it's normally to bury somebody, or it's normally to take up time that somebody else could possibly have. All like AEW does is they take all their guys that are already made men, all of the elite, and all they do is for the beginning of their run was just put other people over to try to make their matches to come even better. And it's just something when Triple H comes back, you know what's going to happen. Kick to the gut, pedigree, pin. Sorry.
You know when I want to see Stone Cold, to piggyback off this point, and I'm not trying to shit on Stone Cold. I fucking love Stone Cold. But you know what would be cool to see Stone Cold? Like, Stone Cold can wrestle Kevin Owens at this year's WrestleMania or next year's WrestleMania in a stunner versus stunner match, and I'll fucking watch it. And that would be cool because it's something different, and he can get Kevin Owens over. But when it's the same repetitive stuff over and over again, I'm sorry. It's just doesn't do anything for me.
So, Tim, I'm assuming you're kind of in Nick's camp, right? That you're over the nostalgic pop in WWE?
No, don't get me wrong. I mean, yeah, I like surprises. What I would like more, I know why they announce the things that they do, but just don't announce it one time and have them show up on Raw. So that way, the next time that Raw comes, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know that, oh, holy crap, somebody's going to show up. They're going to get the views anyway. The network exists. I'm sure Raw, I haven't been up to date with the network. I'm sure the Raw from this past Monday is going to come out in a week or less than a week on the network for you to watch. You're going to get the views. The rating war is a war. No one knows how it's calculated. Half the people all pre-tape the stuff anyway or DVR it, and who knows what goes into the actual calculations. I'm sure you do, Miguel. I'm not that into it, but it's just I don't know the right way to do a nostalgia pop if it's not on a pay-per-view or a big surprise.
I think the nostalgic pop obviously works better with an audience, right? So they haven't been doing it since the pandemic. The only time they actually had somebody was Austin for the first Raw when the pandemic started, because they already committed at that point. And we saw how awkward that was because Austin had zero audience, right? He had nobody in attendance, virtually in person. There was literally nobody in the ring with him, and ended up being pretty kind of weird to see that night. And I know, Fred, I know you remember that night. So
not a good night for multiple reasons.
Yeah, right. So the nostalgic returns is obviously to pop the crowd. And, for me, I think what gets me more than anything else is just hearing that roar of the crowd when Austin's glass shatters, right? When the gong goes off for The Undertaker, when you hear the guitar riff for Triple H's theme song, right? When you hear If You Smell for The Rock's theme song. I mean, there's nothing like that energy. And being there in person, and I think we've all been for at least one of those surprise returns. I mean, I can name countless times I've been in the crowd for these returns. I mean, you just get goosebumps when you're there, right there, live in the moment. Yeah, so I want to talk about a few topics that are obviously trending right now in both the WWE and AEW world. So we'll kick it off with the Roman Reigns angle. I know, Nick, you kind of gave us a little bit of a tidbit of your thoughts on it, but Fred, we'll start with you on this. What are your thoughts with Roman Reigns and the Paul Heyman pairing that's been going on, as well as just maybe a quick snippet too of what you think of the upcoming match with his cousin Jey Uso?
First off, I love the angle that they're doing. I think it was time. It had been talked about. They'll never do it. They'll never do it. And maybe they wouldn't have done it if we weren't in this COVID era, as some people call it. But because there's no fans, they don't have to worry about kids going to buy merchandise at the stands and all that. But for whatever the reasons, it happened. And I think we're seeing that it was the right decision because people are excited about it. Whereas if Roman Reigns came back at SummerSlam and got right back into the title picture as a good guy, people would not be into it. Oh, here we go. Roman Reigns again. Comes right back into the title picture. But you put the heel element to it. You put him with Heyman. Now it's kind of cool. Like, oh, Roman Reigns is champion, but as a bad guy. And him being a bad guy alone, I think, would have been great. But then you put him with Paul, who obviously he has a lot of history with between his feuds with Brock Lesnar. There's just a great dynamic there. And then I think it also, at least for me, I think in the back of my mind, so what's going to happen if and when Brock does come back? Where does Heyman align? Does this end up being a whole screw job and it's just to lure Roman in so Brock can get the Universal title from him eventually? And does he choose Roman and not Brock? Now, I don't like the idea of Brock without Heyman, but it could be interesting television down the road. But as far as the Jey Uso scenario is concerned, when the match was happening on SmackDown, I thought, okay, the way that they did the story going into it was Roman not thinking his cousin could do it, or I don't know if you can do it. I know your brother could, whatever, things like that. I was like, all right, I don't know if he's actually going to win, though. I just thought they placed him in there just as a spot holder. Then when he won, I said, wow. But I think there's more to it than just Jey Uso going on and just losing to Roman. I think one of two things is going to happen. I think either Jey is going to lay down for Reigns, and that's going to, lead to a whole big thing with him and Roman joining forces, and then when Jimmy comes back, or on the other side of that, then you could also have where Roman just destroys Jey Uso. He's going to keep the belt one way or the other, but he can get a ton of heat by destroying his blood. I think there's a lot to be. I don't think it's just going to be a straight up, oh, they had a great match and Roman won. I think there's going to be something to it. So we'll see. But I tell you what, I am intrigued in knowing that if it was somebody else that you know he's going to keep it anyway, right? He's not going to lose it 1 month in. So now there's possibilities with Jey Uso.
I just jump in real quick on your point. I'm not going to go over the Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman angle because I said last week that I think it's great, and I'm a Roman Reigns fan. But there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I want to kind of debate with you a little bit. And the first part was the possible options in that match. I think Uso versus Reigns would have been a cool match to main event, maybe a Raw or a SmackDown. And if you're going to do that lay down angle, I wouldn't do it as the main event of a pay-per-view. I'm not going to say major pay-per-view. They do a monthly. But to have that be the main event, for him to just lay down, I think would be not a great thing. Maybe he's having a great match and the other Uso interferes, and he's the one that joins Roman Reigns. That would be kind of cool, and split the Usos up. The other point you mentioned was about the heat that he would get by just annihilating his own blood. I can't think of a guy who's more hated than Roman Reigns in WWE right now by the fans. I mean, everybody remembers when he came after the San Antonio Rumble, the boos he got. He gets booed all the time. He gets the Cena treatment, but I think people respect Cena. I think they just can't stand Roman Reigns because he shoved down their throats. And I'm a part of that group. I like Roman Reigns, but I think the storytelling can sometimes be a little, repetitive. I don't understand why they didn't use a guy like Big E. Big E just beat Sheamus in what was, or at least what felt like 4 or 5 minutes in the pay-per-view just previous. Why would they continue the feud by having Sheamus, hurt him and take him out of the picture? You have, all of this momentum with Big E. His partners aren't around. It just felt like the right time for me to see Big E versus Roman Reigns. They're two monsters. Let's have that match. I mean, that match is a little more unpredictable to me than the Roman Reigns Uso match, but that's just my opinion.
Tim, what are your thoughts on the Roman Reigns and Heyman pairing, as well as the upcoming match with Jey Uso?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, the only two things that I could have possibly seen happen was exactly what Fred said. Either a squash where he just completely destroys them, or a lay down and get the Samoan dynasty together. I mean, there's enough of them. I mean, AEW is trying to get all the factions back together. They got the fake little 4 horsemen that they're keep teasing. They got the Elite. They got the little foursome faction with Kingston is Eddie Kingston is the leader of that faction. I mean, they got Brody Lee with the Dark Order. I think that WWE is going to start doing the same thing. I think they're going to lead more towards a faction oriented because they see that it's working on the other channel. So if I was a betting man, I don't know how it's going to happen to get them to link up, but Samoan Dynasty, if that's what they're going to call it, because Rikishi, I think already has that, maybe copyrighted or whatever. But I wouldn't mind seeing that. Put more guys with Roman Reigns. He's already hated enough. Just get more guys to be bad guys, because that's the hardest thing to keep.
Give us your quick thoughts on the Roman and Heyman pairing, because we didn't. Obviously, you weren't on last week when Nick and I talked about it.
You mean it from me?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's literally the best thing that they could have done. I mean, turning him heel was the right decision. It was the right decision 3 years ago. It was the right decision as soon as he came. As soon as they booed The Rock in Philadelphia, when Roman, if you could get somebody to boo The Rock, that's when you make the switch. It should happen then. The fact that it didn't happen just kind of made him even more hated because he got shoved down our throats even more. He's a great wrestler. Performer. He's good. It's just that's where the person at the top of the mountain screwed the pooch on making the right decision. And I'm sure the people that have been removed from talent relations and booking probably tried to do this well before. I don't know what finally clicked or why they chose now. Believe me, there's other things that happened in WWE recently that they decide to make the switch on at a ridiculous time, but we won't get on to that.
Yeah, I mean, I gave my thoughts last week, but I think more than anything, the possibilities that they have now with Roman being a heel is probably what the most exciting, intriguing part of all of this is. So I'm curious to see what happens with Uso as well, him in the Uso match at the next pay-per-view coming up, because I do believe that he's going to lay down for Roman, and they're going to start the dynasty, right? The La Familia dynasty, through the bloodline. So
Bloodline, yeah.
we'll see in a couple weeks here. I want to talk about, obviously, on the other side here, right? I know Tim's been waiting for us to get to some AEW stuff. So Jon Moxley, right, just successfully defended the AEW World Championship against MJF last Saturday on the All Out pay-per-view. So, more so than that feud, because it's been about a year now, a little over a year since Moxley joined AEW, right? And obviously I can ask the obvious question, what do you guys think of him coming over to AEW? And I'm sure we can all say it's been a massive success. But Tim, what I want to pose the question, I'll start with you on this, is tell us what you like more about Moxley than you did Dean Ambrose.
See, now you thought that I was going to be all AEW all the way. I don't necessarily like Moxley any better as Jon Moxley than I do as Dean Ambrose.
Wow.
Listen, maybe AEW is using him better because they're putting the belt on him. They're making him the, hasn't lost, just running through everyone. I don't see that big of a difference. Maybe you guys do, but it doesn't hit me the same way. I don't know that he could be the flagship bearer that they're portraying him as. I don't know that he's the one selling the tickets because we don't have fans. We don't, he's not the reason that I'm watching AEW. I'll tell you that point blank and honest. I don't hate him. I'm just not in love with him. Maybe you guys like him more than I do. That's just my personal opinion. He's a good talent. He's a boost to the roster. They're better off with him than without him. I just don't know that he's the 1A, 1B, 1C top of the line talent.
I'm surprised because I would have thought that you would have said Moxley's way better of a talent than Dean Ambrose. But, I'll give my thoughts on that in a second. Nick, you think Moxley's a better talent than Dean Ambrose on screen? Tell us why.
I do. I think I'll use the analogy. I think Dean Ambrose is Jack Nicholson, Jack Nicholson Joker, and I think that Moxley is Heath Ledger Joker. Mm-hmm. Dean Ambrose was an idiot. I'll never forget the Monday Night Raw that was semi-canceled due to snow, and they had him walk in the snow miles and miles to get to the event. It's just they made him a comical kind of goofball versus Jon Moxley, who I think is a legitimate fighter. Truth be told, he's my least favorite of the Shield guys. I was never really a big fan with him. I could take him or leave him. I think the move to AEW has been a success, but he's not my favorite. I certainly don't tune in to watch him, but he's more serious now than he was in WWE, and I think that's better for him.
Brad, give us your thoughts on the Moxley versus Dean Ambrose character.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say I appreciate the Batman reference. I love both Jokers, but yeah, I agree in the sense that I think WWE, they didn't know what to do with him. I don't think they understood Dean Ambrose, or what they thought they understood is what you saw on TV. And that's why they thought he was this crazy, unpredictable guy, that just does crazy things. But you got it in this comedic way that sometimes was cool and other times was you just felt like it was being forced. Because I think he felt forced. I think he did a great job with what he had in WWE. I do. I think he would have, if we saw the Moxley that we see in AEW and had that in WWE, I think Dean Ambrose would have been way bigger than he ended up being. And that's not to disparage. He was former WWE champion. He had a great run there, no doubt. But I will say, I think that him being a little more serious, and I feel like AEW, this is where I'll give them the credit. I think in AEW, you're seeing the Dean Ambrose that you thought you should be seeing and wanted to see in WWE. When he turned heel at the end of his run in WWE, when he initially turned heel, when he beat on Seth Rollins the night that Roman announced that he had cancer. I thought there is no way you get more heat and become more of a heel than what they did. And I was really excited about that. I thought, okay, we're going to see some gritty, down and dirty Ambrose. And it started as that, and then the next thing you know, he's coming out dressed as Bane talking about, the crowd and vermin and all this stuff that I don't understand where that was coming from, but whatever. That's what we got. So I'm gonna say I think AEW did a good job. I think Jon Moxley deserves a lot of the credit, especially like you guys were talking about how AEW gives their guys a lot of creative freedom. So I think it's more him than AEW. But yeah, I think Jon Moxley is a better character than Dean Ambrose.
I have on my show notes here, I wrote down for Moxley segment that we're talking about that he was ahead of his time, right? And what I mean by that, I think we can all agree, if the character Dean Ambrose was able to be in NXT, and I don't mean the NXT of 2012, I'm talking today's NXT, I think Triple H would have made him the Jon Moxley that we see today in AEW, right? Not just saying that, not just saying that, not just saying that.
Else.
I never like to joke around, but no, all jokes aside, I don't think Vince ever really understood the Dean Ambrose character, right?
I don't think he understood Dean Ambrose as a person.
Yeah, I don't think he understood
Not to
him.
cut you off.
Right, no, it's okay. I don't think he understood him at all. The Moxley character is leaps and bounds above Dean Ambrose for sure. Tim, I'm surprised you didn't say that, because I think, to me, Moxley's one of the things I enjoy most about AEW is just how much of a badass fighter he is. He comes out from the crowd, doesn't give two shits what anyone thinks about him, isn't wearing that stupid gas mask that he was wearing at the end of his Dean Ambrose career, talking about the crowd stinking or whatever dumb shit they were talking about. But, I think the Moxley move was the best thing. The AEW move was the best thing for Moxley, because obviously now he's the world champion.
You're not wrong, per se. The best thing about Moxley was the initial Lex Luger shock factor of him showing up at the pay-per-view. That was to get all the eyeballs. Your main eventer from WWE is coming to AEW, and that's the kind of shock that, although you kind of knew it was going to happen, the fact that it did happen and they actually followed through with it, it was the big shock factor. Yeah, and you guys are probably right. You're absolutely. I'm looking at it as a non-biased fan of AEW versus WWE. I guess he's better. I mean, I didn't. Maybe it's just not hitting me yet. Maybe I need to see another feud. I need to see him progress a little more. They're kind of using him as like a sporadic. He doesn't fight every week. He only fights the title fights. He's which is the way it should be done. But we'll see what the next year brings when you get the fans back. If the fans start shitting on him for being Dean Ambrose-esque, and we'll see. We'll see in a year when you bring me back on the podcast how your tones have turned.
For WWE versus AEW debate number 2, right?
Yeah, okay.
Well, so Moxley, like we mentioned, is coming off a successful win at the pay-per-view against MJF, and I'm sure that feud will continue. But I want to transition and talk about your guys' opinions on pay-per-views overall for WWE and AEW. So obviously AEW, being around the last year or so, have been doing, we'll call them quarterly pay-per-views, versus WWE for the last, 25 years have been doing monthly pay-per-views, maybe even 30 years. What do you guys prefer? Do you think monthly is a bit overkill, or are we thinking quarterly is maybe, too much gap in between? So, Fred, I'll hit you up with this one first. What do you prefer, buddy?
I think quarterly is just the way to go. I think month, or maybe 6 a year. Let's say. Let's cut it in half. Takeovers, historically, they've been about 5 a year. That's great. I think with being the main roster, you have Raw and SmackDown, you could afford to at least do 6. One a month is just too much. I mean, then you had that period of time. There were some years there that there were 15. I think 2006 maxed out the most. There were 16 pay-per-views that year. It's too much. It takes away from the special feel of it. Especially, when you have so many guys, you can only do so much. Everything starts to seem repetitive and seem the same. Clash of Champions doesn't seem anything what the next pay-per-view is going to be, with whether it's on a sale or whatever. And that is another point I'm just going to bring up real quick about pay-per-views is I understand the gimmick of every pay-per-view, and that's what they try to do to make every month feel different, be it Money in the Bank, be it Hell in a Cell, be it the Clash of Champions, whatever. But I think that sometimes it just doesn't work, and they're there just to be there, and there's feuds that, say, happen in Hell in a Cell that never should have happened in Hell in a Cell. Sometimes it works out, and they're like, oh, that feud, belongs in Hell in a Cell. And then other times they're just having it to have it. Same with the TLC in December. Does that match really need to be a TLC match? No. And now when you've been running these pay-per-views, they've started those in 2009. That's now 11 years that they've been doing that pay-per-view the same month every year. So I think that's also another issue that they should, look at and change up the pay-per-view style. But yeah, I think quarterly, or like I said, 6 a year is good. It makes everyone feel special. I don't think it needs to be like the old school 4 a year, Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, and WrestleMania. But yeah, I would cut it down for sure. Just makes it feel bigger,
What are your thoughts, Nick?
I agree 100%. I was going to say bi-monthly. I have a question. I'm not going to touch on, Fred, everything that Fred said, I basically agree with. You have professional wrestling that has these themed gimmick pay-per-views, and you have these, Bad Blood, and everything is Bad Blood, or you have all these different pay-per-views where they just are very repetitive. And obviously they have the big ones like SummerSlam, Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, and WrestleMania. But then you go to something like UFC, and it's just numbered: UFC 1, UFC 2, UFC 3. And you go to professional boxing, and there is no name. It's just, it'd be like Reigns versus Uso. That's the name of the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Do you think that WWE or AEW would benefit from more realism in doing it that way? Or do you think that it's better having these named pay-per-views? I know the gimmick pay-per-views, I agree with you, Fred. I'm not a huge fan of the gimmick pay-per-views outside of Money in the Bank and obviously the Royal Rumble. But what do you guys think of that?
Go ahead, Tim.
I don't see it happening. I just don't. There's always going to be a gimmick behind it. There needs to be a selling point. I don't know how big of a selling point you can have. The main event, I guess, is a selling point. So I see what you're saying. So you're saying, yeah, but who's really wants to buy Reigns versus Uso? If
that's basically my point.
That's the worst example. Moxley MJF. I think that as a pay-per-view as a whole, all out would sell. If you just tell me that that's like the thing that I was looking forward to the most, I guess I could get behind it. I don't think WWE is going to have a problem selling the pay-per-views because it's $10 a month, and whoever doesn't spend $10 a month to watch their product, I can't wrap my head around it. Now you're telling me AEW, you want them to spend $50 every month to watch a pay-per-view. That's just not going to happen, and that's why they're doing quarterly. The build-up, they need build-up, especially with a new organization. You can't rush anything. You need to build stars. You need to build feuds that people are going to care about, and that's the biggest thing that WWE just isn't doing. They rush everything. They rush anything. You had the theme that you could have built up into a monster. You could have came up with different reasons why, he takes the first loss on your biggest pay-per-view moneymaker overseas that really didn't do anything for anyone. It just ruined one of your biggest characters that you hadn't had in forever. And don't worry, Nick, I know that's your boy. We understand. There was ways around him losing that they could have made out better. But I kind of went off on a tangent. But you got to do quarterly pay-per-views. Maybe 6. If there's a reason, do a 6. If there's a Tuesday night in Texas where something happens at one of the big 4 pay-per-views or at a Raw or SmackDown that force you to have a big match or need you to get a title holder, if somebody gets hurt, I can get behind that. Just once a month it's brutal. It really is.
I would go 6 a year as well too. And to answer Nick's question, I think the gimmick pay-per-view is what sells a lot of these pay-per-views, right? So Hell in the Cell, TLC, Money in the Bank, obviously Royal Rumble. you're watching these pay-per-views because you know the match is going to be good, right? No matter what the feud is. And I agree, Fred, I think you said it earlier, like with Hell in the Cell, sometimes there's no need for the match to be a Hell in the Cell, right? It could be their first encounter, whereas Hell in the Cell was designed to be the blow-off feud, right, between two competitors or however many competitors are in the match. But I think with naming the pay-per-view just, Reigns versus Uso, it won't draw as many eyes as, whatever the gimmick is of the month. Like in this case coming up, right, Clash of Champions, the gimmick is every title in WWE is on the line. And yeah, I mean, the hardcore fans will probably watch it regardless, but you may get a few extra eyeballs. That's like, oh, that's cool. Every title's on the line this month. That's why I want to watch this specific pay-per-view. So while the main event is certainly important to pull the audience in, I think it's the gimmick of the actual pay-per-view is what gets a lot of people tuning in versus maybe the specific matches. So I don't know if it would hurt to change it to, just the two headliners, calling it that, or WWE 3,000, 10,000, whatever the hell they'd be on at this point if they went with that. But yeah, I think the gimmick pay-per-views is what sells a majority of the shows. I want to talk about obviously the new normal that we're in, right? The COVID world or post-COVID world, wherever you want to call it. And the fact that a live audience at full capacity hasn't been seen since March. But, obviously, fast forward, we know what WWE and AEW have been doing the last couple of months or so. But just as of 2 weeks ago now, both of them kind of changed their business model a little bit, where we have WWE introduced the Thunderdome, which is a virtual viewing experience with virtual fans. And AEW has decided to allow 10 to 15% capacity come in for their weekly show, Dynamite. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Tim, I'll start with you on that. What do you prefer? And be honest, do you prefer the Thunderdome or do you prefer the 10 to 15% capacity that AEW is doing in Daly's place?
I'll tell you what, I would love the 10 to 15%. If the 10 and 15% could even be anywhere near the talent. Because AEW still has their talent around ringside who are like me as a mark or you if you were sitting outside of WWE as a mark around the ring and just, they're scripted to do things. They're not doing anything off script, where the true reaction of the fans are, in the upper deck, and there isn't an upper deck, but they're the second section. They're way out. They cut to some of the fans, and the fans are just, they're disconnected a little bit because they're not as close. I mean, WWE has had a ton of trouble trying to regulate what people put on the screens that I don't know how that's not pre-screened or how they don't have IP addresses or how some of those people are not in a ton of trouble yet. But, if 10% was closer to the ring, that would be my way to go.
So you're saying the Thunderdome right now is a better viewing experience for you?
I guess to an extent. Nothing's better than a real crowd. So I don't know if anyone's better than the other. They're just, for right now, they're just different. Which, different's good. It's better than it being empty. So
yeah,
any improvement they're making is a good one.
I think everyone can agree with that. Fred, what do you like better, honestly?
Yeah, I mean, I've been part of the Thunderdome a few times, and it's cool. I mean, for me, I find it a little bit of actually, like, if you do it, like being a little annoying because the Thunderdome feed is ahead of what you're seeing on TV, not by like 10 seconds, like literally like 30 seconds to 45 seconds. So there's a big disconnect there for me. Like, if I want to watch on TV, but I'm in the Thunderdome. But as a viewer, that's just personally being in the Thunderdome. But if you're a viewer, I think the Thunderdome is a great idea. It's a great concept, and I think it's working great. I do think that AEW having the live fans is also very cool, and I'm sure that's something that WWE would have loved to have been the first ones to do it. But yeah, it's just not the same. There's fans there, but it's not, like you said, if they were maybe closer, having, some people scattered all out throughout this. I mean, it's not a huge stadium, but a decent sized venue. doesn't feel like there's even like a people there, whereas the Thunderdome, it's more, even though it's virtual, it feels like there's more, and it feels like there's more of a connection there. So I think the live fans idea is great, obviously, but I just don't I think it was too soon to make it work really well. And I think WWE had it, they felt like they had to take a more responsible route and not have people. Just like in the beginning, AEW were the first to have the wrestlers, the guys and girls ringside. And then eventually WWE implemented that with the NXT guys, but behind the plexiglass and all that. So I think WWE is taking more of a conservative approach to how they do things, which also I think is a smart idea, because people will be the first to jump on them and criticize them for not doing certain things. If they don't take those precautions, people will be like, WWE's irresponsible. Whereas AEW does it, nobody really bats an eye. But WWE, they do it, forget about it. The world's over if they had, fans in attendance and one person got sick, putting death threats on Vince McMahon if they don't already. But, so I'm going to go with the Thunderdome. I think the idea of AEW having fans is cool. But the idea of it and actually it being two different things.
Nick, I know you told me earlier you prefer the Thunderdome, right? So tell us what's your favorite part about the Thunderdome?
Well, I'll tell you first, before we get into it, you got to announce it like Vince McMahon. What's it called?
The Thunderdome.
There you go.
I was glad we at least got that in before Bray Wyatt came out that night.
Our viewers wanted to hear that. I'll tell you first what I don't like about it. I don't like the name, even though I love hearing you say it. And I don't need the crowd reactions. I wasn't a fan of that when they actually had crowds. They're almost like capitalizing on the Brock Lesnar, Undertaker, Street Guy. I don't need, or the Miz girl. I don't need crowd reactions. Those two were great, but I don't need it for every single thing. What I like about it, and I'll just tell a quick story. I was on the phone with somebody I work with, and I was talking to him, and we were just talking about what's on TV, and he was like, yeah, a couple months ago, I was flipping through the channels, and like I saw WWE Raw was on, and it was like, I couldn't watch that. It was like in the gymnasium. And he mentioned that he had watched it recently, flipping through the channels, and like stopped and watched for a while because the Thunderdome is just such a cool visual. I think it's great. I would take the Thunderdome all day over 15 fans. I think the biggest thing for WWE right now is this football game tomorrow in the NFL season, because I think they're closely watching. I don't think that there's a big difference between an open stadium and obviously a 15,000 capacity arena, but the Royal Rumble is in a stadium. WrestleMania is in a stadium. Right. And I think if the NFL can go through it without any kind of issues, and knock on wood, God willing, they don't have any issues, Royal Rumble will be in front of a live crowd, and so will WrestleMania. I would bet on that.
I hope so, because
I would double down on that Miguel will be at both.
I think Fred will be joining me probably.
Oh, for sure. There was actually a report today that came out about the Rumble.
Yeah, I saw that.
You saw that, and they were asked about. He has a source about a Rumble location. They have one in mind, and like you said, Nick, they didn't say NFL, but they're watching the NBA and the NHL very closely for their upcoming season to see what they do and how it goes. But they would love to have fans at the Rumble. And like you said, the Rumble's always, the last couple of years, has been in a stadium, baseball stadium.
Yep.
It's possible. I mean, again, at some capacity, not I'm sure full, but there's a chance. I don't know where, but there's a chance.
Yep.
So we'll see.
I think for AEW, the one thing that I don't like about the small capacity is you can't really hear them, right? So if they're somehow able to put like maybe the boom mic a little bit closer to them, I mean, you can hear them when Jericho comes out, right? And Jericho's song turns off and they keep singing it, which is obviously always, something cool to listen to and to be able to experience. But, if you're going to only have 10 to 15% capacity there, I think they got to pump in the crowd noise a little bit more, because that's what I do love about the Thunderdome. I love the pumped in crowd noise. I think it just makes it feel like wrestling again. Not that everything that the Thunderdome is doing is perfect, because obviously it could be better, right? Obviously, they show people on TV or on those screens that they shouldn't be showing, and I'm sure they're working to improve that. But I love the pumped-in crowd noise, and I think AEW can definitely take a play out of WWE's book for that one.
You think that the noise is real?
No, I know it's not.
Out of the Thunderdome? Like, they're pumping whatever they want in there.
Yeah, I know.
You think they're singing you think the 15 people in the stands are singing Jericho's theme music that loud? I think that's fabricated too. Because
no, that's real. That's real.
They're singing the wrong lyrics. Like, half of them don't know the lyrics. It's cool because that's what they did when it was a stadium full of people where enough people would drown out the people. But there's no way that the noises that are coming out of the Thunderdome or the noises that are coming out of the 50% arena are the real noises. I think they're just doing what professional wrestling do to put on a good show, is just filtering it in with what they think they want to hear.
Yeah, no, I think WWE's noise, I know that's obviously fake, but I think AEW's is legit. I think that's really the fans singing Jericho's song, because it's not as loud as it could be. It could be louder. That's just my take on it.
I don't know personally. I'm not there, so I can't. Just when you watch AEW the next time and Jericho comes out, when they cut to the fans, they always cut to the worst fan. He doesn't know the lyrics, and they leave it on him. I'm like, that's killing me. You couldn't even just pick the best guy who. Obviously, you watch this person before you click the button to go to his view. It's just.
Well, Fred, what do you think? Fred, you looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, well, no, at least regarding the fans in attendance at the AEW shows, I mean, I think part of the thing that makes fans go crazy and go wild is when you are in a 15,000-seat arena or an 80,000-seat stadium and there's masses of people surrounding you. It's like you're in this together, right? When you're with two people and then there's other people, I don't know how far they are from each other in Daly's place, but whatever it is, they're all far from each other. They're spaced out. There's a disconnect there. Yes, what's going on in the ring is what's important, and that's what you're reacting to. But I think part of it, when you do react, is reacting with people together in the audience. I remember Miguel's got the shirt on right now, Once in a Lifetime, right? Rock and Cena. When The Rock won, I was there in Miami. When The Rock won, I was hugging, and I mean, God, now I'd be dead probably, but years ago, I was hugging and high-fiving people, like, oh my God, The Rock! It's like you're in this together with people that you don't know. I mean, I've been to many shows where I'm like high-fiving people that are, in front of me or behind me or to the side of me or whatever. So I think you don't have that now. So it's hard for the crowd to be engaged when it's only them and one other person in that area. It's if you're going to an arena and you're an audience of one, say, you know what I mean? And these guys are in the ring and you're just there in the arena like by yourself. You're only going to get as excited as it's just, I think right now, I mean, we're working with what we got kind of thing. And there's nothing else you can do. So, until we have an arena full of 15,000 people, either option, what WWE's choosing to do virtually or what AEW's choosing to do with very limited fans, are your only two options right now. So it's at no fault of either one of the companies for, how it comes off. But I do think we're in a way better place than we were a month ago for both products. Both things only enhance the product. They don't take away from it, in my opinion.
I agree. I think we're definitely leaps and bounds better than we were a couple months ago. The last topic I want to cover, guys, and this is going to be a little bit more of a rapid fire. We're going to throw out a few quick topics here, just like a little quick release, but just want to ask you guys all a few questions. Want to get your quick opinions on it. We're going to start with, what is the bigger boneheaded move that professional wrestling has done? Is it the continuation of Raw Underground, you'd say, on the WWE side, or is it letting Matt Hardy continue to work with a concussion on the All Out pay-per-view for AEW? Fred, give me your quick answer on that one and why.
this is not an anti-AEW and a pro-WWE thing, but it's got to be the Matt Hardy AEW concussion. I mean, that's just irresponsible. Underground has its flaws for sure. I think, but they're still working. You know what I mean? It's not a straight shoot. It's not like Brawl for All. We saw how that went in '98. I mean, they're still working. Maybe a little more aggressive, a little snugger, and but yeah. I mean, letting Matt Hardy continue. Maybe 20 years ago, that would have just been the norm. But with what we know today, you can't do it. If WWE did that, forget about it.
Tim, what about you?
Okay. First, they're both awful. The Matt Hardy thing was the awfulest of the two, but WWE could super capitalize on that underground thing. Put Shayna Baszler in there, let her destroy everyone. Put Matt Riddle in there, let him destroy everyone. That's what they did. Just capitalize off of that. I'll leave it at that. It's just missed opportunity on one end and just stupidity on the other. So,
Nick, what was the worst decision of the two?
It's the difference between stupid and fucking stupid, and they're both pretty terrible. But the concussion thing, to Fred's point and everything, is just what we know now. Is just there's just no debating. It's that.
How about let's go to the next topic here. I want to hear your favorite current WWE and current AEW wrestler. Nick, I'll let you start with that one. Who you got?
I'll go with The Fiend, and I'll go with MJF. And for the simple reason that I think they're both super creative in their own rights, and I think the less the companies that they work for are influencing them, the better they will both be.
Fred, how about you?
Right now, I'm Roman Reigns number one. I just love what he's doing. And as far as AEW, I'm a huge Chris Jericho fan, always will be. But I think MJF is killing it. And I think he's their brightest star of the future for sure.
How about you, Tim?
all right. So, MJF is the answer, but I can't pick MJF because you guys both did. But Mr. Brody Lee, what he's been able to do, if you guys don't watch the All Elite, their third-party YouTube show where he's allowed to be himself more, tune into that, and I promise you'll be a bigger Brody Lee fan than you are just seeing him on TV. WWE, I like Seth Rollins. If they could utilize the Messiah gimmick more, nothing better than a bad guy, and people like to hate him, and they should just keep going with that.
Last question before we wrap up. This has been a lot of fun, guys, but we're going to do a little fantasy booking really quick. Looking down the road, let's say, I don't know, we'll call it 10 years from now, who's the biggest star? Who's projected to be out of both companies? Pick one guy or one girl. Who do you think is going to be the next John Cena, if there ever was to be? And you could pick either between somebody in WWE or AEW. So, Nick, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm going to have you go first on this.
It's hard to say the next John Cena because John Cena was a good guy, but I would go in terms of who's going to have the biggest star power. I'm going to go with MJF. I think he's the biggest star as far as people that aren't already stars. I like him a lot. I would pick him.
How about you, Fred?
You know what? I'm going to throw a different one out there that nobody's probably expecting and maybe nobody's going to agree with. I'm going to say Keith Lee.
Okay, I like it.
Not with his current theme music withstanding, of course.
How about you, Tim?
And MJF is the easiest answer in the world. I mean, he's got it all. He's a little green in the ring, but he's only going to get more exposure. I could listen to him talk on the microphone 24/7, 365. He's just better than you, and you know it. That's it.
I don't hate the Keith Lee answer either. I think Keith Lee's awesome. I would have turned off the show if anybody had said Matt Riddle. So I'm happy that nobody said that. But
I want you guys to be on the lookout for Karrion Kross too, and I know Fred, you know him.
I was debating between Keith and Karrion, but I figured, well, Keith just went to the main roster. He's got a little bit of a step ahead for the 10 years, but yeah, any of them can be, honestly.
And Miguel, I'm really proud of you for not shitting on AEW's last pay-per-view. Can't believe you didn't bring that up.
Only because we're running out of time here. But this is a lot of fun, guys. I want to do this again. We'll go into part 2 of our debate here. So I appreciate you two boys jumping on. Do you guys want to plug anything before you go? Maybe you have a Twitter handle or Instagram. How can the viewers find you two? Fred, anything you want to plug, buddy?
My Instagram, I believe I'm at Freddie D on Instagram, and with a period at the end. And Twitter at Fred DeCorte, DeCorte. And that's it.
Awesome. Tim, you got
John
anything?
Cena follows me, so maybe he'll follow you if you follow me.
Nice. Tim?
I just have a face. I have a Twitter account. I would be making it up. I think it's at Big Time TS or something like that. Who knows? You can find me on Facebook. My real name's on the screen. All you got to do is look it up.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it.
Do you have any new shows to plug, Tim?
I'm a co-host of one other show that's on this True Exact Radio thing. The exact name is just slipping my mind right now. Maybe my host could help me out with that.
Sharp bets, as my wife walks by. Sharp bets and fantasy sets, baby.
If you want to win money.
If you want to win money.
Tim has joined the True Exact family, so you can catch him and Nick on their new weekly podcast for all of you fantasy football and just football lovers overall. So, guys, thanks so much for your time. We'll definitely do this again. Appreciate you guys.
Definitely. Awesome.
Take care.
Peace out.